Hi there and welcome to this video. As with so many of my videos, they are taken a few weeks in advance, and this one's no different. So it was taken in advance of the COVID-19 lockdown here in the UK. I do hope that those of you who are affected by that, either here in the UK or in other countries, are keeping safe and are well. The topic is one that when you have even more limited time, here in the UK we're restricted to one piece of exercise a day. When you're limited, you can't pick what weather you have, you can't pick the conditions you have, and you have to make the best of what can be a suboptimal deal sometimes. Some of the photos here aren't my best ever, I'll admit to that. But it does reinforce that photography, videography is so much more than just the output images. It is about the fitness, and it is about the process that goes into creating photos. So without much more ado, I'll leave you to the video, and do look after yourselves, and I hope you're well. So this morning I'm up at a place called Ranmore Common. It's up near Dorking, about an hour south of London, up on the North Downs. In another video I show the view from the North Downs way, and I may show that as an intro or part of this as well. I'm not sure. I came out with a view of taking some photos and perhaps capturing one video. I may break this into two videos because I've taken a slightly longer walk than I was planning this morning. So yeah, we're on the North Downs, about 30 miles north of the English Channel, in between London and the south coast. It's one of the higher points in the south of England. Lots of lovely woodland up here, a mixture of fir trees, yew trees and natural deciduous trees. So that makes it quite difficult because very few of the trees have got leaves on at this time of year. So quite a difficult time of year. Here in the UK, when there's a lack of quite often daylight and certainly sunshine, and you have to take a different approach, as I said in one of my previous videos. You have to think outside the box, challenge yourself to perhaps shoot a different genre. So today, as I said, I came out to shoot landscape because the weather forecast said it was going to be intermittent sunshine. However, it's a pretty grey day. The sun threatens to poke through every so often. So I've changed my plan. I've moved to a more intimate nature style in the woodlands, because there it doesn't really matter whether you've got flat light. Actually, you don't really want shadows necessarily. It'd be nice to have a bit more brightness in some of the shots, but let's see what we can find. There's always something to be that you can focus on, a different genre, as I say, a different style. I'm going to have a think about, whereas traditionally I would shoot nature with a colour post-processing. Maybe today we've got to look for patterns and perhaps a bit of black and white post-processing, just to bring out those patterns and the contrast. Because what you find here in the UK is, in the winter, it's, as you can see behind me, predominantly a palette of green and brown and shades thereof, which makes it quite difficult to pick out subjects in this kind of environment. So quite a challenge today, but I'm up for that. It's always good to get out, get a bit of exercise, good for the mind as much as the body. So let's take a look and see what we can find. So this morning I've got with me my Z7 with the 2470 f2.8 lens. It really is my go-to lens if I'm not sure what I'm going to be going out and shooting. then it really works for me. It's not that heavy, it's certainly lighter than the F-mount version that I used to have with my D850. I'm videoing this morning on my Osmo Action just because as a setup that's really useful. It's really lightweight. I can carry it with me and just do a piece to camera every so often. And the quality on it is pretty good. Shooting at 4K 24 frames per second, the same as I would shoot on my Z6 or my Z7. And it allows me to capture video whilst really focusing on the images, still images that I'm looking to capture as well. So the UK has been not only having to contend with the coronavirus COVID-19, we've had to deal with a fair amount of rain, particularly in the north of England. There's been a lot of floods, and if you've been affected by that, my thoughts go out to you. Even here on top of a hill, it's pretty muddy. At this time of year, it's still pretty cold. Spring hasn't got here yet, and therefore we have to be perhaps take a different style. None of the trees have got their leaves on, other than the evergreens. So we're perhaps going to have to look for patterns. We're going to have to look for really intimate parts of the woodland here, and perhaps whereas traditionally I'd use colour processing, maybe today I've got to look for patterns in black and white. So you've got to take a different approach. So I wasn't finding much obviously on the main track, so I've decided to come off into the woods, and we've got some of these beautiful yew trees, really old trees here. Obviously they're evergreen, they keep their needles on all year round, but they have these really beautiful gnarled, twisted trunks. So I'm going to have a look around here and see what I can find in terms of images of patterns, perhaps in the bark or the way the branches are twisted. And when you look at these gnarly trunks, what you see, because there's so many, possibly hundreds of years old in some of the yew trees around here, is the pattern in the bark almost tells a story of the past, of how it's grown over time, and it's reached down, the roots have reached down into the soil. So maybe with a bit of black and white processing we can get some of that pattern to really come out. So this is a close-up of the root, and as you can see there are some nice shapes, some nice colours, some nice textures. It's never going to be an image that I'm going to print and hang on my wall, but it does show you what you can achieve by getting in close. I've chosen a square crop on this one just because I felt it worked better with some of the clutter around it. So you have to think in a different way when you're getting in close in this sort of intimate nature style. So this next shot is a real close-up of the patterning on the bark, and this time I used the 70mm end of the lens, and this is why the 24-70 is a great lens in these situations. You can go wide angle right into using that 70mm to get a bit closer. I was also shooting at 1100 ISO because it is quite dark in these woodland type environments, and I was using f2.8 because I wanted to try and blur out the top and the bottom, create a bit of a distance effect in there. So this is a colour version. I also then tried to see whether the pattern worked in a black and white post-processing. Let me know which one you prefer in the comments below. It'd be great to understand and know which ones you thought were better. So again, this is a not a great image, but I like the fungus and the moss being close together. The colours work, the sort of shape and the texture of the fungus on this log. Now I was shooting at f8 this time. I was down at the minimum shooting distance of what I think is just under 40 centimetres with the f2.8 lens, which is quite close in, and at that distance the depth of field even at f8 is quite narrow, so it did allow me to blur out the background, but it also blurred out some of the fungus on the right hand side, so I did decide to crop in a bit more just to deal with that. But you know, nice colours. Again, it shows you've got to get in close on some of these woodland shots and make the most of the colours where you see them. So the sun is just poking through a little bit here, not enough to create shadows. We've got some of these big old trees here which are really nice. We've got lots of lichen. Some of the challenge of shooting at this time of year is you've got lots of shades of green and lots of shades of brown and not much else. So quite a challenging palette to deal with. See, what would be great here is a macro lens, because I'm now shooting as close as I can at the 70mm end. But this kind of scene, it'd be great to get in really close on the fronds of the fern here, because there's some really nice detail, and a macro would bring that out. With the Z7, all the megapixels, I can crop in quite a lot, and that'll be quite helpful. So that'll give me some more options. So that was at f8. I'm now going to shoot at f2.8, and there's a particular frond here that has some really nice detail in it. So this is the image I created from that. As you can see, the beautiful shapes and textures of the moss, the fronds, the symmetrical shapes. It would be really great to be able to get in a lot closer. All of the shots I took were handheld. I didn't take a tripod with me. And therefore what this forces you to do is to think about your technique, think about the settings in the camera. On this one I was at ISO 100, so it was a bit more light there, the sun was beginning to come through, which allowed me to bring up the shutter speed to 1/500th of a second to reduce any blur, because I was trying to get in quite close, and therefore any movement in the camera does show in these images. So I hope you like these images. This one I've done in a couple of crops, one out of the camera, and then this one, which I think I prefer, is a square crop again. So again, when you get back home in these times when we've got self-imposed isolation, post-processing can be a great opportunity to see what you can do with the images that you've perhaps got in your back catalogue or you've managed to capture when you've been out and about. So as I say, let me know in the comments below which of the images you prefer. It'd be great to hear your views on them. So I finally found a little bit of colour on this otherwise green and brown morning. A nice yellow gorse bush with a few gorse flowers coming out. Could just do with a little bit of sunshine to lift the colours, but nevertheless beautiful to see a little bit of colour on an otherwise green and brown morning. So I'm a bit off the track now, because you get a lot more variety here. Obviously if you're on a track, you don't get quite such a good choice of different images. It's beautiful woodland here. It's a real mixture of evergreens, like these beautiful fir trees here, yew trees, and then native deciduous trees. It's really nice in the spring because you get a lot of bluebells in here around about sort of April, May time, probably a couple of months from now, when spring is in full steam ahead. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed this video from the North Downs and the North Downs way. If you did, hit subscribe, hit the notification bell, and you'll be notified of future videos. And I look forward to seeing you in a future video.